Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Are we, the people who believe that there's an extraterrestrial presence here, crazy? Or are the people who don't believe it, are they the ones who are crazy? That's the big question I have today. And this question was brought on by a series of different events that happened while I was doing some research online today. I ended up on Twitter and I saw some posts from Mick West. Then I saw there was an article that I read on Vice, and it made me pause. I had to pause and sit back and think about everything. Think about what I was seeing and what these people are saying, what the world in general thinks about aliens and UFOs, and I had to stop it. I had an epiphany, so to speak, basically. And we're going to get it. I'm going to tell the whole story here, and we're going to find out who's crazy and who's not crazy. All right. For one thing, there was a lot of ugly stuff online on Twitter today, particularly from the biggest debunker of our age, Mick West. For one thing, he was trying to say that Stanton Friedman should have been ashamed of himself for his comments about debunkers and how they perceive the whole UFO phenomenon. I mean, basically, everything that Friedman said about debunkers was spot on, and so there was actually Mick West should be ashamed of that. For making that statement. I mean, Friedman's not around anymore to defend himself on that kind of nonsense. But that's for another day. Maybe I'll get into that another day. I talked about Friedman before, and his comments and his ideas about the way debunkers think. We went through that a million times before in different podcasts. No, that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about some other things. Now, today, NASA tweeted some interesting things. Their new study, their new UAP study is launching, and one of their tweets says the focus of the study is to inform NASA what possible data could be collected in the future to shed light on UAP. There is no evidence supporting the idea that UAP are extraterrestrial in origin. Well, of course, Mick West, the biggest debunker of our age, jumped on that comment, that sentence, and he just parroted it on his tweet, on his Twitter feed, and he wrote, "There is no evidence supporting the idea that UAP are extraterrestrial in origin." And I couldn't help myself. I commented back. I wrote that there's a lot of evidence, but you ignore it. There's physical trace evidence. There's witness testimony. There are pictures, films, and videos. There is official documentation. Debunkers always ignore the evidence and then claim there is none. And then I had a bunch of acolytes of Mick West come after me. These the followers, the ones who were drunk on his bathwater. I'm not going to get into everything that they were saying. But there is a contingent out there, okay, of people who do not believe this. They believe there's absolutely no proof whatsoever that there's an extraterrestrial presence on Earth, okay? Now, I had to stop when all this was going down. For one thing, I shouldn't even reply to these people. I don't know why. I'm a human being, though. You get mad, right? Oh, okay, right? You say that, I say this, and we're just a back and forth that's not going to lead anywhere. I mean, me trying to convince a cult follower of Mick West is the same as trying to convince a congregant of a televangelist, hey, that the preacher on the stage he doesn't really believe in God. He only believes in the money in your wallet. We'll be trying to convince them of that. I mean, they're not going to believe that. They're going to continue to throw every dime they have at the televangelist on stage, thinking they're going to get to heaven that way. But you can't convince them. That's the same way I look at the followers of a debunker. You can't convince them. They don't want to. They don't want to accept this. But you have to ask yourself the question: who's crazy then? I mean, a lot of these people, the non-believers out there, and the debunkers, they look at people like us, people like me, and think that, they're just crazy. There's no proof. What are they talking about? What do you mean? Proof? There's no extra. Show me your proof. Right? They don't look at it. They don't care about the proof. They don't read any books about this. They don't look at any of the research that's been done by people that actually investigated the subject. I mean, so I made it clear to these people, I can't, it's not my fault that you're not educated on this. That you need to take care of that yourself. But they don't want to. They're not interested in that. And instead, they sit back and they think there's a logical, in quotes, explanation for everything. Well, I don't really know what's illogical about an extraterrestrial presence. What's so crazy about it? There's really nothing crazy about that. I mean, considering the size of the universe, right? I mean, the chances are, and actually, it's not even chances. They are here. Right, although I do have the benefit of my own experiences, having seen a flying saucer myself, up close and personal in 1994, and also my 1977 encounter as a child with an alien presence in the room, right in my bedroom. So it's not like I have that benefit. But even if I said this online today, even if I didn't have that benefit, I would still. After researching this, there's no way that anybody could walk away and think there's nothing going on here. But anyway, it got worse as I was going through Twitter. I came across an article on that was somebody posted, and it was on Vice. And I'm not going to get into the whole context of the article. I've talked about this subject before. This is just somebody's opinion on, and the headline of the article is, "Scientists are gaming out what humanity will do if aliens make contact." So basically, I guess there's some scientists out there who are trying to figure out how mankind will act if we're contacted by aliens. Okay, but as you go through this article, there's the way it's written. It's written as though none of the stuff that we talk about on this podcast, or none of that stuff exists. I'll just read some of the beginning of this article. It says, "Do intelligent aliens exist somewhere out there in the universe? It is a grand mystery that has captivated humans for generations, fueling ever more sophisticated searches of the skies for signs of advanced civilizations. But while aliens have taken many forms in our imaginations, from hostile invaders to inscrutable ciphers, we have absolutely no idea what extraterrestrial life forms might look like, how they would communicate, or even if they exist at all." So, I didn't even bother to read the rest of the article. Maybe I will in a different day, but after I read that first paragraph, it was like, what? What? See, this is the person who wrote this is living in a different universe. This was written by Becky Ferreira. Okay, she's living in a different reality than I'm living in. Because in the reality that I live in, we do know what they look like. I mean, there's been tens of thousands of people who have seen these things. Okay, it's not... So I don't know... Obviously, this person's not in the same planet that I'm in. Maybe she's in another parallel dimension or something where none of the things that I'm aware of happened. Maybe they didn't happen in the universe that she's living in. Okay, but anyway, that really, after the tweets and then seeing this story, it made me realize that yes, we have a problem here, and I guess the problem is who's crazy and who's not crazy. Well, let's go through some of the evidence that we do have. There's different cases that we talk about all the time on this podcast that a lot of people talk about all the time. For instance, the Turkey videos from 2007, 2008, and 2009. A Turkish fisherman actually, he basically took a bunch of different video of an object floating out over the Black Sea on multiple occasions, and on close-ups of some of these videos, you could see the actual beings inside. There are beings inside the spaceship. I'll leave a link to that. There's a site that's completely dedicated to this. I've talked about this before on my podcast. There were experts from 4 different countries that looked at these videos and confirmed that they weren't faked. And even moreover, there was a group of ufologists, including the late Dr. Roger Lear, who, after a conference in Turkey on UFOs, they all headed out and joined this fisherman on this beach where he was filming these things, and they saw the object, all of them did, with their own eyes as he was filming it. And again, on multiple occasions, you could see there's a hatch open on this craft, and there's alien beings in there moving around. There was an expert from Chile that did an analysis of this, and he went in as totally believing that he was going to be able to debunk it, and he couldn't. There were alien beings that you could see on this ship. I mean, they weren't human. I mean, they're not human, and they look just like the kind of things that a lot of other people have been saying for years. That when they get abducted, that's what that's what they look like, right? They look like this, right? And not only that, there was multiple kinds of beings there. There was the grays with the big heads and the big eyes, right? And also there was a praying mantis being there. And it also, in one of the videos, it looks like there's a human being laying down as two of the beings manipulate the person. Now, again, you could go to I'll leave links to that YouTube site and also to the Chilean analysis that was done on this, as I always do. But to me, this was proof. Now, I remember, I think at one point I said something to Mick West a long time ago on Twitter, and he responded saying, well, that was just puppets. Like, he didn't even look into this. He didn't study this. He didn't meet any of the people. There was a couple of yo-hos on some YouTube channel who never met any of these people, never looked at any of the research, obviously. They just came up with their own thing saying, oh, yeah, it's fake. Yeah. Okay. Who are you? I mean, they didn't do any real investigation. See, I mean, now, I didn't go there either and investigate it, but I'm basing my opinion on other investigators, the experts from the 4 different countries that looked at the video, on the Chilean analysis, on Roger Lear's own comments about this, who commented saying it was incredible, and he saw it from his own mouth. That's proof. That's proof. Just like everyone's been talking about, these beings, you could see them on that craft. That is proof. That constitutes proof. Okay, that's not enough for you? How about the Ariel school incident? Explain it to me. How could that be anything other than extraterrestrials? You can't explain it. There's no way you could debunk it. There were 62 elementary school children in September of 1994. In a morning recess, they all went outside. There was at least one flying saucer, a couple of flying saucers apparently, but there was one they got pretty close to, and there was a couple of alien beings hanging around it, right? Some of them actually, they saw one of these beings was communicating with several of these children telepathically. Meanwhile, other kids saw one of the beings in the background running and disappearing and then reappearing and then starting all over again somehow. Something very strange. It was unexplainable. Right? All of them. And after it was all over, they somehow, when this thing was over, they all took off. The flying saucers took off. They went in and told the teachers. When the teachers came out, the objects were gone. Now, all these kids now, they're all grown up. That's almost 30 years ago. And they're all saying the same story. There was actually a documentary that came out this year called Ariel Phenomenon. Do the non-believers, did they ever look at this evidence? I mean, like, explain to me how this could be what else could it be? I mean, it's obvious what it is. There's no way 62 kids could conspire in 1994 and continue to conspire all these years later to perpetrate some hoax like this, some fraudulent story. It's impossible. Kids don't do that kind of thing. They don't think that way. Now, there have been some things that the bunkers throw out there. For instance, they'll say, well, it's mass hysteria. Yes, that's what it is. Mass hysteria. Mass hysteria. It's only an answer, right? Mass hysteria. And then when that falls apart, people realize that really doesn't explain it. There's no way 62 kids all having mass hysteria at the same time, you know. Now, they'll say, well, there were UFOs reported in the days leading up to this. Well, okay, that even makes it more credible, right? But no. To them, that means, they all heard that story, and they all went hysterical. That's the mind of how a debunker and a non-believer and a denier, that's how they operate. Okay, and then, that wasn't enough, so then some dude comes up with some other theory. Some theory that it was most likely a traveling puppeteer troupe. Basically, some puppeteer troupe showed up, had puppets of aliens, puppets of a big giant alien spaceship, a couple of them actually, and the puppeteers must have been hanging out of trees with little marionette dolls, right? But it doesn't, for one thing, it doesn't explain the telepathy that was ongoing, because a lot of these kids said that these beings were communicating with them telepathically. Doesn't explain that, right? So, Like it's a totally ridiculous, unacceptable explanation, right? That's marionette dolls hanging from trees, and then by the time the teachers got out, the whole puppeteer show's gone. Yeah, it was a magical puppeteer show. They must have been. You know what happened? I'll tell you what happened. This is what happened. This is how to marry. This is what happened. Okay, they knew all the kids were in class in the morning, right? So while they were in class before the recess, they set it up. They all the puppeteer showed up with his truck. He kept it hidden behind some tree somewhere. They set up the flying saucer. They set up the alien dolls, right? All the operators they hid in trees. They were all wearing camouflage. The kids came out. And then they made the aliens move around. The kids thought they were seeing something. When they ran back into school and screamed at the teachers, they hurried up, threw everything into the puppeteer truck, and then took off without any adults seeing them. They expect you to believe that? So who's crazy? Somebody who believes in a theory like that, or the mass hysteria theory, or somebody who just accepts the reality of what the kids told you? Oh yeah, this thing didn't look like a human being at all. So who's crazy? So I don't think it's crazy to believe in the story that 62 witnesses are saying happened, right? I think that's sane. I think it would be crazy to believe something else or to try to come up with something else, because that's not what they said happened. There wasn't no puppet show, right? Just like these other cases. I mean, just like the turkey. Yeah, it was a big fake, and all these people, they just decided to all tell lies. That's all it is. They're just a bunch of liars. Because that's the only excuse. That's the only way you could try to debunk it. Everybody's a liar. Everybody's a liar. Everybody's a liar. I don't want to believe it anyway. I don't want to believe that there's aliens here. No. That's how they act. They act insane. So I think it's those people who are insane. They're the ones who can't accept the reality. Now, what is going on? Why is this happening? Why is it that I'm seeing something that nobody else is seeing? I mean, there's a certain percentage of people on this planet apparently that recognizes this extraterrestrial reality. I know I'm not crazy, right? I know with the experiences I had were real. I know that the books I've read, and the research I've done, I know that it's solid, right? I know that all these, there's all these different events that happens. There's no way it could be debunked. The two cases I really just talked about, especially the Ariel school, it's undebunkable. It's untouchable. So I know the stories I'm seeing. I could see that, it's evident to me. There's no question, right? There's no question that happened. There's no question that there were alien beings that showed up at that schoolyard on that day in 1994. They had to be, right? What else could it be? So I'm seeing all these things, but yet people in the press, a lot, like I would have to say more than 50% of the population of the world. I mean, believers might only constitute less than 1/3. I don't know. I'm not sure I know there's been different kinds of polls, but really if it came down to it, I mean, do you believe there's an extraterrestrial presence here or not? I think certainly more than 50% would say, no, because they'd be afraid of the stigma, most likely. It's still hovering like a cloud over a lot of people's heads, and they wouldn't want to admit it. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. Either these people are crazy, that they can't accept reality. They just, don't tell me anything more. I can't. I don't believe you. You're a liar. No, you're crazy. No. It's you who's crazy. It's basically projection. They're projecting. So, what's going on? What if, we've been talking a lot on here recently, what if these alien beings are controlling us, trying to, and they're doing a really good job of a vast majority of people are being controlled psychotronically somehow. Everyone on the world is basically, there's something happening, messages getting sent to everybody's brain on the planet it's not real. Don't believe this. There's no such thing as extraterrestrials here. But yet there's a force of some humans who are trying to tell us, even some people in the Pentagon, people like Lou Elizondo's telling us, there are people out there trying to give the message out that, hey, wait a minute, there might be something to these UFOs after all. There's some people trying to fight through this, right? Some people are trying to get through to the rest of the world, but for the most part, the rest of the world is something's triggered in their brains to make them not believe it psychotronically. What if? It's possible, right? I mean, these beings have shown a propensity to basically, they could conk a whole household out, and while they're in the middle of abducting somebody. That's what I just talked about that. I talk about it all the time. I talked about it recently. My experience in 1977, nobody in the house. They were all completely conked out. Meanwhile, I was the only one that was awake and moving. There was something in the room that wasn't human. Despite all the screams and hollering and carrying on that I was doing, nobody came to the rescue. Screaming at the top of my lungs, in the middle of the night, nobody's coming to help me. Meanwhile, there's something beings there. Next thing you know, I got conked out. They have the ability to do that. They have the ability to control us. Maybe they can control the world on a vaster level than what we really realize. What if all these people, they just can't accept reality? They can't see what's going on because something's happening. Some sort of psychotronic interference is making them, obedient, not to look into this, not to believe in this. Because I don't know. I know what's going on. I mean, I'm looking at the evidence, and it's pretty damn clear. There's extraterrestrials coming here, right? Again, we could talk about a bunch of different cases, but I'm focusing. We'll talk about just one case right now, the Arrow School. There's no pictures. There's no video. But there's a lot of witnesses. There were marks in the ground. A lot of witnesses. They were only little kids at the time. They're all saying the same thing now that they said then. We could talk about other cases. We could talk about the 1973 Pascagoula case, those two guys. The Allagash abductions, Betty and Barney Hill. There's so many different cases, and they're just the most known ones, but there's so many other ones, tens of thousands of them. Tens of thousands. There's a lot of anonymous cases that we don't even know the real names of the people that are mentioned in books written by people like David Jacobs, PhD, the only guy at one time he's a retired professor from Temple University right here in Pennsylvania. He was the only guy teaching a course on UFOs. This guy actually did research himself. He did the studying. Like, he knows more than someone who's a debunker who doesn't do anything except sit back and debunk, make proclamations. It's not a straw man argument like some people might want to think. That's what they do. That's who they are. But why? Maybe there's another reason that they can't help it. People, not just them, but just a good chunk of the world. They don't want to accept it. It could be alien interference. Again, this is just a theory. I'm not saying that this is true, right? I'm just throwing it out there as a possibility because I don't get it. I'm not understanding what's going on here because from all these years of researching this, it's very clear. It's most certainly very clear. And I know I'm not crazy. There's something here. There's a presence here. But there's a good chunk of this world population that doesn't really believe it yet. Some of them are on the fence. Some of them are, wishy-washy. Some of them are just outright against it. They can't accept it for some reason. And again, I'm not saying it is psychotronic control by the aliens, but maybe it is. How do we know? Maybe the government's being controlled all these years. Maybe that's why it's not coming out. Maybe there's people within the government who are fighting this. They're unable to fight off the psychotronic control. There are some people, maybe possibly people like me, who are able to do it. But yet these other people cannot. Because I can't figure it out because I know I'm not crazy. All the research, all the evidence points to the reality that there's extraterrestrials here. It's not craziness. Yeah, I don't have a dead alien body here and down in the cellar that I could bring up and show you as proof that's not, that can't happen. That, you don't need that. There's enough other evidence to tell you what's going on. Although I'm sure that our governments, particularly the United States government, most certainly has some dead aliens on ice. I'm sure of that. Positive. Most certainly. So, who's crazy and who's not crazy? I think the people not accepting this. If they're not being psychotronically controlled, then the solution is something else. And what is that solution? Are they insane? Are they just not ready. They don't want to look at it. They can't accept it. In the back of their brains, they know this has been brewing. Maybe that's all it is. Or, I don't know. Like I said, it's either psychic, there's something. I know, because I know what I'm seeing, right? What I'm seeing is real. I know. But all the research I've done, I'm positive. I'm 100% positive. There's something else here that's more intelligent than humans. I mean, maybe the reasons that they can't accept it is because it's not their idea of how extraterrestrial visitors would act. Okay, they don't like this whole abduction, stuff. UFOs just showing up and then leaving mysteriously. That's just too scary for them. So in their minds, they imagine something a lot different. They think that there's going to be like some sort of a big event, maybe landing outside the United Nations or something. Some regal event going to happen. I've talked about this before too. This is how a lot of great thinkers of the world think. That there's going to, they believe that if there's going to be extraterrestrials coming to Earth, it's going to be, there's going to be a bunch of dignitaries, like there's going to be all heads of state from all different countries, gathered somewhere. They're all going to, there's going to be a deputation, there's going to be a big giant flying saucer that lands, a ramp opens up, and a deputation of different extraterrestrial entities from different planets are going to step out, and it's going to be like a scene out of Star Wars or something. Like, so one of them's going to look like Hammerhead, another's going to be Jar Jar Binks, another one's going to look like Darth Maul, and they're all going to have, greet each other and then meet for a big banquet afterwards. So, I mean, that's what I think maybe that's what's going on. I don't know. I mean, maybe that sounds crazy, right? But I don't understand. I know I'm looking at evidence here, and it's very clear. It's very clear. I mean, again, I have the benefit of my own experience, but even if those things didn't happen, right? I would still know by doing the research that, obviously there's an extraterrestrial presence here. A faction within the United States government, as well as other governments of the world, have been keeping this a secret, have been covering it up. They don't want to make this public for whatever reason. In fact, there's another story, I'm working on it right now, of a cover-up that happened over 50 years ago that nobody's ever heard of before. And I just started looking into this one, and at some point I'll have a story on that. And this is all brand new, too. But yeah, it's been going on for decades. I mean, we know something's going on. There's been too many people, too many reports, too many people had experiences. I mean, there's different YouTube channels out there, like UFO and Eyes on Cinema, that just have all these different little snippets from different documentaries, sometimes full documentaries, but a lot of different things that were reports and documentaries that happened throughout the years, that were filmed throughout the years from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even the early 2000s. You put all that stuff together, you look at all that, all these people, they're all not lying. All of those people aren't crazy. And then you read the research, you look at the books that a lot of people have investigated and researched and looked into, right? You understand that there's an extraterrestrial presence here. But yet we're living in a world where most people just are not accepting it. So I ask the question, I mean, who's crazy? Why aren't they not accepting this evidence? What the hell do they want? A lot of these things, like, for instance, if that Ariel school thing was to go to court somehow for some reason, right? At the end of it would be, okay, yeah, these are obviously not beings. The court would determine that these were not beings from another world. Obviously, they weren't human. They were somehow communicating telepathically, and they were flying around in craft that no human being has or is known to have. So, I mean, these things would be proven in court. The Travis Walton case, the 6 of the 7 people involved initially all passed the lie detector test, and then later on there was another lie detector test done on all the 6 witnesses and Travis Walton, 7 people all together. They all passed the lie detector test. A UFO, they all saw the UFO. Travis was taken by it. He disappeared for 5 days and then showed up 5 days later. He's not lying. But yet there's people all over the internet that think he's crazy, that say he's crazy. For instance, I saw a video that was done by this very popular YouTuber named Dr. Todd Grandy. The guy's pretty good, right? He has some good videos on there, but he's just saying that this is all a lie and nonsense. I mean, what he's saying is nonsense. So there's just a lot of nonsense out there from people, and I don't understand what's going on here. Either it's psychotronic control by the aliens, either these people are just so afraid of this, right, that they can't accept the reality that's right in front of their face. There's evidence all over the place. What more do you need? I mean, I could understand if this was like 1950. By that point, there really wasn't a lot of stuff. But after all these decades, all this information has compiled, and it's undeniable now after 75 years. You even have the government for the past 5 years. You have the United States, the Pentagon, telling you that there's objects that they don't know what they are. It's still not enough. People aren't ready to accept it for some reason. Like, again, either they're crazy. There's a psychotronic block that they make, preventing them from accepting reality. I mean, I know there's something here. So I don't get it. I don't get it. So I know that I'm not crazy, and I know that other people that the kind of people that listen to my podcast, right? They're not crazy. They understand. I know there's some people who are out there on the fence, right? If you do the research, if you do an extensive research on this, read the book. I have a list of books that I always provide in the description. Read those books. The mainstream media, what are you doing? How could you not see this? I don't know. Again, it's just the sad fact of it. I don't know. I know that I'm not crazy, and I know the people that other people that investigate this aren't crazy. But the non-believers, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about them. They can't accept reality. I mean, reality's right in front of their face, but they can't accept it. How could you deny for instance, I'm just talking about a couple of cases here, the Turkey videos, the Ariel school incident, but there's a whole bunch of other ones. Tens of thousands of people over the decades have encountered these craft. Tens of thousands of people have claimed to have been abducted, right? Not all of these people, they're not crazy. These people are not insane. Actual psychiatrists and other doctors have examined these people. They're normal people, right? But unfortunately for them, they have these extraordinary experiences, which most of them don't want to have. But the rest of the world doesn't want to accept this, right? For some reason, and I don't know. I'm trying to figure out why, because the evidence is there. It's real. I mean, I just don't get it. Right, like that article, for instance, the Vice article where it says nobody knows what an extraterrestrial looks like. I mean, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I mean, the Whitley Strieber's book Communion came out in the 1980s. It had a picture of an alien right on a gray right on the front cover. This is what people have been seeing. This is what everybody else has been talking about. All these abductees for all these years have been talking about. And then, of course, in 1994, the being that these little kids, all of them saw in broad daylight, looked just like what these other people were saying. So it's obvious. They're here. There's an extraterrestrial presence here. The people who aren't accepting this, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with you. I don't know what it is, right? I don't know if you have a psychotronic block going on, right? Or I don't know if you're just, you're too afraid, right? I don't know if maybe that's what it is. Or maybe you're just, maybe you're the crazy one.